What if I told you that the key to predicting how long you'll live isn't your cholesterol, and it isn't your BMI, and it definitely isn't your cardio routine?
Right.
What if the absolute best predictor of your functional aging is simply how hard you can squeeze your hand?
It sounds wild, but it's true.
Welcome to the deep dive. If you're listening to this, you're probably a deeply curious person. But I mean, if you look at the avalanche of health advice out there, it is so easy to fall into the trap of, treating your body like a car.
Exactly, like a machine.
Yeah, you think of it as this mechanical thing where a check engine light comes on, you swap out a broken part, and you just expect it to run perfectly again.
Which is just not how biology works.
Not at all. So today, we're unpacking this really incredible stack of source material. It's a comprehensive guide titled Foundations of Metabolic, Immune, and Neurological Vitality.
It's a massive document.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this because our mission today is to completely ditch those outdated surface-level health metrics that treat you like a machine. And instead, we're going to look at the hidden biological levers that actually drive your vitality.
Which, requires a pretty massive shift in perspective. True health isn't about perfectly rigid, punitive routines. It's just not.
Right.
It's about understanding the why behind our biology. Because once we understand those underlying mechanisms, whether we're talking about brewing a bizarrely specific 36-hour super yogurt.
Which we will get to, I promise.
Yes, we will. Or realizing that chronic physical pain can actually be an illusion generated by the brain.
Yeah.
We stop fighting the body and we start collaborating with it.
I am so ready for this. And to start, we're looking at the biggest paradigm shift in the entire guide. If you have a traditional bathroom scale in your house, we are officially giving you permission to just throw it in the trash.
Just toss it.
Because it completely blinds you to what is actually happening metabolically.
Yeah, the sources lean heavily on the work of nutrition expert J.J. Virgin and muscle physiologist Dr. Daniel R. Moore. And they argue that the metrics we should actually be obsessing over are fat-free mass and, surprisingly, grip strength.
The grip strength thing is fascinating.
Right. J.J. Virgin points out that individuals with the lowest grip strength actually face the highest all-cause mortality.
Wow.
Yeah, your grip is literally a proxy for your overall neurological and muscular integrity. And I mean, it all comes down to how we view muscle in the first place.
Because we usually think of muscle just in terms of aesthetics, right?
Yeah.
Or athletic performance.
Exactly. But these sources describe muscle as a sugar sponge.
A sugar sponge, I love that.
Yeah, it's a massive glucose sink. And also a metabolic Spanx.
Okay, let's unpack this metabolic Spanx idea. Because if you have more muscle, you have a larger reservoir to basically safely dispose of the glucose from your meals, right?
Exactly. Which totally prevents those massive insulin spikes that lead to chronic inflammation.
Right. And the sources mention a case study with one of J.J. Virgin's clients, this woman named Vicky. Could you break down what happened there?
Yeah, Vicky's story is great because it perfectly illustrates why the scale is basically a liar. So she came in desperately wanting to lose 10 pounds.
But she had that exact number in her head.
Totally fixed on it. But the clinical team completely ignored her total body weight. They focused purely on building her functional muscle mass. And over the course of an entire year, Vicky's scale weight did not drop a single pound.
Not 1 pound.
Not one. However, her body fat plummeted from 25% down to 18%.
Oh, wow.
And she lost 2 whole inches off her waist. She essentially swapped out, inert inflammatory fat for highly functional, metabolically active tissue.
So the scale didn't move, but her entire biology changed.
Right. That physical transformation radically increases what researchers call her strength span. It protects her bone density and massively lowers her long-term disease risk.
But, I mean, maintaining that muscle requires understanding how our daily habits interact with our biology, which brings up a pretty mechanical question for you.
Sure.
If muscle is this amazing metabolic sponge, does sitting at a desk for 8 hours basically wring it out so it can't absorb any fuel?
Well, what's fascinating here is that Dr. Moore's research shows that it is essentially exactly what happens.
Wait, really?
Yeah, his lab found that sitting for 8 hours continuously literally blunts protein uptake. I mean, you can eat the most perfectly optimized high-protein meal on Earth, but if you just sit in an office chair afterward, your muscles are biologically locked out.
That is wild.
The mechanical inactivity basically signals the muscle fibers to close their doors, so they aren't actively absorbing those dietary amino acids at all.
But the fix they found is so elegantly simple, isn't it?
It really is.
Because the research shows that interrupting that sitting with just 10 chair stands,
Literally just standing up and sitting down 10 times.
right, or just 2 minutes of walking every 30 minutes after a meal, it physically unlocks the muscle again.
Exactly. That tiny bit of mechanical tension signals the receptors to open the doors back up. It actively increases the delivery and utilization of those amino acids.
It creates the demand for the nutrients to actually enter the tissue.
Right. But we run into a major biological hurdle here because you cannot build that healthy muscle tissue, or any healthy tissue, really,
Yeah.
if your body is silently fighting a massive internal war.
Yeah, systemic inflammation will just sabotage every metabolic gain we just talked about.
Completely. And the primary battleground for that inflammation is the gut.
Which brings us to the microbiome and this protocol from Dr. William Davis for a 36-hour fermented super yogurt.
Yes.
And I know superfood is such a marketing buzzword, but the sources are wildly specific about this. You can't just buy, like, regular yogurt at the grocery store.
No, absolutely not.
You have to use exact keystone bacterial strains. It was Lactobacillus reuteri, L. gasseri, and Bacillus subtilis. Why is it so hyper-specific?
So it's highly specific because it's designed to solve a very modern, very specific crisis in our digestive tract. Most of us have taken standard, broad-spectrum antibiotics at some point in our lives, right?
Yeah, almost everyone.
Well, those antibiotics act like a nuclear bomb in the gut. They wipe out our protective microbes, and when those primary defenses are down, fecal bacteria from the colon actually ascend upwards.
Yikes.
Yeah, they cross the ileocecal valve and take up residence in the small intestine. And this causes a condition known as SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
And the small intestine is where we absorb our nutrients. It is definitely not supposed to be packed with colon bacteria.
Yeah, not at all.
The sources explain that when those misplaced bacteria live in the small intestine, they eventually die there and their cell walls break apart. And when that happens, they shed these things called lipopolysaccharide endotoxins, or LPS.
Right, LPS.
And because the small intestine is so permeable, those LPS endotoxins leak directly into your bloodstream.
And your immune system recognizes those floating endotoxins as a massive critical threat.
It panics.
Exactly. It triggers systemic inflammation throughout your entire body to fight an infection that, well, isn't really an infection. It's just bacterial debris.
Wow.
But that constant state of high alert makes your body hold on to visceral belly fat. It shreds your sleep architecture, and it literally breaks down the muscle tissue we were just talking about building.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The sources detailed the lab testing on Dr. Davis's 36-hour yogurt.
Yeah, the flow cytometry testing.
Right, flow cytometry, which is basically using a laser to scan and count individual microscopic cells.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed that a single half cup of this specific yogurt yields about 300 billion microbes.
It's an absolute overwhelming army.
It is. So what do those specific strains actually do once they get inside you?
So those specific keystone strains are chosen because they naturally produce compounds called bacteriocins.
Bacteria.
Right. You can think of them as targeted natural antibiotics. When you consume this massive dose of 300 billion microbes, they basically march into the small intestine, set up camp, and release these bacteriocins to specifically target and kill off those invading endotoxin-producing fecal microbes.
Oh, wow. So it just wipes them out?
Yeah, it physically cleans out the small intestine and reverses the endotoxemia.
The results are pretty staggering once you understand that mechanism.
Yeah.
Like the sources mentioned Dr. Davis's own personal experiment.
Yeah, his results were crazy.
He was in his early 60s, and he was only going to the gym for like 15 minutes a week.
Barely working out at all.
Barely. But he started eating this L. reuteri yogurt. And because he shut down that massive internal inflammation, his body wasn't fighting itself anymore. It could finally utilize amino acids to build tissue.
Right.
He gained 13 pounds of muscle and increased his physical strength by 50% in just 3 weeks.
Which just proves that the body's capacity for regeneration is astounding, you know? Once you remove those internal biological roadblocks.
Yeah.
But managing that internal gut environment is really only managing the damage already inside the house. We also have to look at our external physical barriers to prevent threats from getting in.
Which leads perfectly into proactive immune hygiene.
Yes.
This is where the guide introduces a protocol from a beekeeper and wellness founder named Carly Creamer. She advocates for a daily routine using bee propolis in the form of throat and nasal sprays. And the idea is to defend the respiratory tract against environmental pathogens before you get sick.
And propolis is a genuinely fascinating substance. I mean, it's this complex, sticky resin that bees create by gathering and synthesizing the natural immune properties of various plants and trees. They use this resin to line the physical walls of their hives to keep them entirely sterile. And when humans use it, particularly in the respiratory and digestive tracts, it functions as a potent immunomodulatory agent.
I love that word,
It's a
immunomodulatory.
great word.
Because reading through the data, it sounds like propolis isn't just a basic, dumb shield that blocks everything. It acts more like a smart thermostat for the immune system.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that smart thermostat analogy is totally spot on. Because a lot of severe allergies or autoimmune issues happen because the immune system is overactive.
Right. It's attacking harmless things.
Exactly. Conversely, when you get a bad seasonal flu, your immune system might be underactive and slow to respond.
Okay, so propolis modulates both extremes.
Yes. The sources cite a meta-analysis of 17 studies showing it significantly reduces key inflammatory markers, specifically things like CRP and IL-6.
And we can think of CRP and IL-6 as chemical distress flares your immune system shoots off when it's panicking.
Exactly. By keeping those distress flares in check, propolis staves off immunosenescence, which is the literal aging and degradation of your immune system over time.
And Carly's personal story really anchors this, because she was suffering from a hyperactive immune system, severe autoimmune issues, chronic tonsillitis.
She was in really bad shape.
Yeah, she was frequently hospitalized because her body was just constantly sounding the alarm. But she started using bee propolis sprays, and she fully recovered in 5 days.
5 days.
And hasn't been sick in 7 years.
That's incredible.
The sources even mention her 2-year-old daughter uses the propolis sprays daily, and she managed to stay perfectly healthy while sharing a room and toys with a sick toddler on vacation.
Which really highlights the massive power of fortifying those frontline physical barriers.
Totally.
But, you know, we have to look at a completely different kind of threat now. We've talked about defending the body against internal bacterial endotoxins and external environmental pathogens.
Right.
But what happens when the threat isn't a bacteria or a virus? Like, what happens when the brain itself misinterprets safety and creates a debilitating physical response completely out of thin air?
This brings us to chronic pain. And I'll be completely honest, this section of the source material entirely challenged how I view the human body.
Which is a huge shift.
It really is. The guide pulls from pain scientists, Dr. Howard Schubiner and Dr. Rachel Zoffness. And they introduce this radical concept of mapping your pain recipe, which includes your biological, psychological, and social triggers.
Right.
They argue for reappraising chronic pain not as a sign of structural physical damage, but as a neuroplastic danger signal.
And this represents a monumental shift in modern neuroscience. I mean, for decades, the traditional medical model dictated that if you have severe back pain, well, there must be a broken or degenerating structural problem in your back.
Yeah, that makes sense intuitively.
But Schubiner and Zoffness explain that the brain is locked in a dark skull. It doesn't actually see what's happening. It generates pain based on a predictive processing algorithm. Pain is simply an alarm system designed to protect you from perceived danger.
So what does this all mean? Because I have to push back here on behalf of anyone listening.
Go for it.
If someone has been in absolute agony for years, are we saying their pain is just all in their head? Like, that it's fake?
This raises an important question, and the distinction we make here has to be crystal clear. The pain is 100% real.
Okay.
You are physically feeling it. Your neurons are actually firing. But the source of the pain isn't necessarily a torn tissue or a herniated disc in your back. The source is the brain's alarm system getting stuck in the on position.
Oh, I see.
Functional MRI studies show that emotional stress, hidden trauma, or just intense fear activate the exact same neural circuits as a physical injury.
So the brain literally can't tell the difference between emotional danger and physical danger.
Exactly.
The sources mention a process called central sensitization. How does the brain actually get stuck like that?
Think of it like practicing an instrument. When you experience chronic psychological stress or intense fear about your body's fragility, your nervous system essentially practices these pain pathways over and over.
Oh, wow.
Right. Through central sensitization, those neural pathways become highly efficient and hypersensitive. The brain learns the pain so well that it starts triggering the alarm even when there is absolutely no physical damage at all.
The story of Gary in the sources is unbelievable context for this.
Yeah, Gary's story is wild.
Gary suffered from severe, debilitating back pain for 25 years. He was told he was incurable by multiple doctors and actually became suicidal.
Just heartbreaking.
Truly. But he started working with Dr. Schubiner, learning that his pain was a neuroplastic response, a learned danger signal. And during this process, Gary was just standing in a pharmacy line. He was feeling normal, everyday stress, and he felt his back pain instantly spike from a level 5 to a level 9.
Just from waiting in line.
Not from lifting anything heavy, but just from the emotional stress.
Because his brain's predictive processing algorithm associated the emotional stress of that moment with the physical sensation of danger, and it fired the pain alarm to protect him. But once Gary understood that mechanism, he could intervene. He used expressive therapies like specific types of journaling and emotional processing to physically downregulate that algorithm.
Wait, how does writing in a journal actually turn off a physical pain signal?
So when you use expressive therapy to process hidden, repressed emotions, you're forcing the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of the brain, to examine the feeling.
Okay.
And this proves to the amygdala, the fear center, that the threat is just an emotion, not actual physical tissue damage.
That makes so much sense.
By sending those messages of safety back to his brain, Gary completely recovered in 6 weeks.
6 weeks, after 25 years of agony.
It's amazing. He eventually traveled to Europe and was walking 20,000 steps a day, completely pain-free.
There's another case study with Dr. Zoffness about a patient named Sam who was completely bedbound for 4 years. They treated him by pacing his social exposure. So first, just walking to a mailbox, then going to a dog park. The sources explain that safe social touch and human connection actually produce endogenous opioids in the brain that physically lower the pain volume dial.
Right, because chronic loneliness skyrockets cortisol, which acts like an amplifier for pain signals.
Wow.
But safe human connection acts as a literal neurological analgesic. However, successfully rewiring those deeply entrenched neural pathways and clearing out all the neurochemical stress of the day requires profound brain maintenance.
Right, you can't just hang out at a dog park 24/7.
Exactly. The brain has to solidify those new, safe neural pathways, and the only time it can perform that structural rewiring is during deep sleep.
Which brings up a massive biological hurdle, because the systemic inflammation we talked about earlier can completely sabotage our sleep chemistry.
It really can.
Dr. Matthew Walker, the sleep scientist, gives a very specific protocol here, swapping out evening alcohol for a non-alcoholic nightcap made of pure, unsweetened Montmorency tart cherry juice.
And this is huge because most people drink alcohol at night because it acts as a sedative to relax them, but it absolutely shreds your sleep architecture.
Right.
It blocks the brain from entering the deep restorative stages of sleep. Tart cherry juice does the exact opposite, but not for the reason most people think.
You're right. Everyone assumes tart cherry juice works because cherries contain melatonin.
Yeah, that's the myth.
But the sources point out that the melatonin dose in cherries is microscopic. It's way too small to actually put a human to sleep. So if it's not the melatonin acting as a sleep aid, what is the juice actually doing?
The real magic lies in the anti-inflammatory pigments in the cherries called procyanidins.
Okay.
Let me explain the mechanism. So when your body is inflamed, whether that's from gut endotoxins, stress, or a hyperactive immune system, it produces this enzyme called IDO. And IDO has a very nasty habit of destroying an essential amino acid in your body called tryptophan.
And tryptophan is the critical building block we need, right? Because the pathway is tryptophan converts into serotonin, and serotonin converts into melatonin.
Precisely. If inflammation is high, the IDO enzyme breaks that first link by destroying your tryptophan. So your brain loses the raw materials it needs, and it can't manufacture its own melatonin.
And your sleep is ruined.
Exactly. But the procyanidins in the tart cherry juice act as a bodyguard for your amino acids. They physically shut down the IDO enzyme.
Wait, is tart cherry juice actually more like a bodyguard for your amino acids?
Yes. By blocking IDO, the juice protects your tryptophan supply line, allowing your brain to naturally manufacture the exact right amount of serotonin and melatonin you need for deep, high-quality sleep.
It makes so much sense why the Sleepy Girl mocktail, which uses tart cherry juice, went so incredibly viral.
Oh, absolutely.
It was originally created by a woman managing polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS. And Dr. Walker highlights that women with PCOS suffer a 6-fold higher rate of sleep disturbances, specifically because the condition drives up biological inflammation.
Exactly. The IDO-blocking antioxidants in the tart cherry juice directly neutralize that inflammation, protecting her sleep supply line.
And getting that deep, slow-wave sleep is just non-negotiable for longevity.
Right.
When you enter deep sleep, It activates the brain's lymphatic system. And you can think of the lymphatic system as the brain's plumbing network.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
During deep sleep, the brain cells actually shrink slightly, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and physically wash out neurotoxic waste, like amyloid beta plaques. Clearing that daily debris drastically reduces your long-term risk of Alzheimer's and cognitive decline.
It's just essential maintenance.
Okay, I have to pause here, because if you are listening to this right now, you probably have a smart watch on your wrist buzzing to tell you to stand up.
Probably.
And while having data is great, I want to point out a massive irony in everything we've just outlined.
Yeah.
We've got 10 chair stands every 30 minutes, brewing a 36-hour bacterial super yogurt, spraying bee propolis, neuroplastic reappraisal of chronic pain, and optimizing our sleep supply lines with cherry juice.
It's a lot.
It is an incredible, scientifically backed toolkit. But the trap is that rigidly tracking all of this biological surveillance can trigger the exact chronic stress and cortisol spikes we are desperately trying to cure.
It's a very real, documented phenomenon. Gerontologist Barbara Waxman and functional medicine expert Dr. Mark Hyman call it well-being burnout.
Well-being burnout.
Yeah. We become so hyperfixated on biometric perfection that the pursuit of health becomes a severe physiological stressor in itself.
So if tracking your optimum sleep stages and your macros is stressing you out, you have full permission to literally hide your wearable device.
Just put it in a drawer.
Exactly. Because prioritizing joy isn't just a nice self-care buzzword for a greeting card. The sources show it is a vital, measurable biological multiplier.
The data on this is stunning. I mean, Waxman cites a 21-year longitudinal study looking at people's perceptions of their own health. The individuals who constantly stressed out, worrying that they weren't doing enough physical activity, faced a 72% higher mortality risk compared to those who didn't stress about it.
Regardless of their actual physical activity levels.
Yes, the stress of worrying about health was more dangerous than the physical inactivity itself.
That is insane.
It just shows how powerful the mind-body connection truly is. Alternatively, researchers looked at hotel housekeepers. These women were on their feet all day doing heavy physical labor, but they didn't view it as working out.
Right, it was just their job.
Exactly. Researchers simply helped them reframe their daily chores, explaining that their work actually met the Surgeon General's requirements for an active lifestyle.
And what happened?
Just by reframing it, by changing their perception to a positive one, they saw measurable physiological health improvements in their blood pressure and weight in just 4 weeks.
Wow. Because experiencing joy and psychological flexibility actually shifts the autonomic nervous system.
Yes.
It pulls your biology out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. Which brings us to the tragic case of Derek in the source material.
Oh, Derek's story is so telling.
Barbara Waxman worked with this client who had the perfectly optimized life. His wearable data for sleep, nutrition, and exercise was absolutely flawless.
Right. On paper, Derek was a machine functioning perfectly. But in reality, his actual well-being and health were steadily declining because he had completely stripped all the joy, all the spontaneity, and all the flexibility from his life just to serve this punitive routine.
He was a prisoner to it.
Exactly. The stress of being perfectly healthy was literally making him sick, which is why establishing a simple morning reset, like getting 20 minutes of sunlight to halt your cortisol production naturally and actively tracking joy and purpose, are just as important as tracking your fat-free mass.
Absolutely.
Long-term health span is only possible if your habits are sustainable and grounded in joy, not punishment.
Which is such a perfect way to summarize this entire journey we've been on.
Yeah.
I mean, we started by throwing the bathroom scale in the trash and focusing on how functional muscle operates as a metabolic Spanx.
Yep.
We learned the mechanics of how antibiotics cause SIBO and how to brew an army of endotoxin-killing bacteria to clean out the small intestine. We fortified our frontline physical barriers with bee propolis, discovered how to use expressive therapy to downregulate the brain's false danger signals to erase chronic pain.
Which is still just wild to me.
Totally wild. And we protected our deep sleep tryptophan supply lines with cherry juice. And finally, we learned that none of it matters if we burn ourselves out in the pursuit of perfection.
It fundamentally challenges the way modern society views health, which, leaves us with a lingering question to ponder long after this deep dive ends.
What's that?
If our emotional state and our perception of joy can literally alter our mortality risk by 72%, and if safe social touch can physically lower our pain dials, Is it possible that our modern obsession with treating the body like a machine to be fixed is the exact thing making us break down?
That is something to truly think about the next time you look at your health routine. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. Take a breath, hide your wearables if you need to, and go find your own joy today.